Hi everyone, this is Braden Young, and I am going to go over session 4 of my campaign, Wispvalley, the Crumbling Kingdom. I'm going to try to make this video as long as the last one because the session was mostly combat encounters. So I'll just try to expand on exactly what happened in this session and then try to go over some stuff as well. So, where we left off last time, the party had just finished a combat with four shambling mounds that they had encountered on a random encounter, and they were cooling off from that combat, getting their stuff together, and then after they had taken a breather, they continued on their way to look for Jameson Silverfang, who they were searching for from last session. So very quickly, they continued their following some of the tracks they were able to find with some good survival checks. They were able to encounter a area of the forest that had these ruins from a rundown outpost in the middle of the woods. And they approached cautiously and encountered um they encountered four individuals. Yes. They encountered four individuals who originally they thought were lycanthropes, but after trying to um reach them amicably and just approaching the situation from talking it through before they started combat or anything, they found out that it was Jameson Silverfang that they had found, along with three or four scouts actually. And they were talking with them, trying to figure out what happened since they had gone missing because they're supposed to arrive the night before. They're supposed to come back to the town of Wolf's Head, and they discovered that the scouting party that Jameson was leading had been attacked by a pack of lycanthropes that they had encountered. Their scouting party had been, I believe it was seven. Oh yeah, it was seven people. Three of them had been killed during the initial attack, and then Jameson and the three survivors from that attack, his additional scouts had retreated and they had camped out in this ruin that they had encountered. So, um, they had established themselves in there and they were waiting to find an opportunity to leave because they knew that the lycanthropes were out in the woods somewhere. And one of my party members, the character playing um, Ward, the Oracle, had he casted this spell that is from an Unearthed Arcana document. It's called House of Cards. He casted that spell because his entire thing is Tarot cards and stuff, and it's very thematic for him. He casted a spell called House of Cards and built a fortress made out of cards in the middle of the ruin so that they could encamp there and wait until everything was clear for them to get out. They talked a little bit amongst themselves about possibly meeting with the lycanthropes and coming to some sort of resolution, maybe talking things through to see what they want. And I had Jameson communicate to them that the lycanthropes weren't really very talkative. They were attacking first, and they were either killing people or taking them as captives to be turned into lycanthropes later. And while they were discussing, um, some of them were keeping watch, and they rolled some perception checks, and they were able to see that there were um, over a dozen lycanthropes in the woods surrounding their location, and that is when combat started, where the lycanthropes decided to make their move and try to finish what they had started. Uh, in this combat, I decided to use a mechanic that Matt Colville has used in his games, where he created minions. There's a few videos on his channel that talk about how that works. So I created these lycanthrope minions to throw at the party, and the first round I had them all approach, and I decided to hold back on them making any attacks. I decided to have them just use their entire turn to get up to all the characters. And looking back on it, I think that was a mistake, because within the first round, the party had taken out over half of the werewolves that I had introduced, uh, just based on their turns, as well as the NPCs, even though the NPCs weren't able to do as much as the characters were. But I think that was a mistake on my part because they had taken out like over half of them. I think I had introduced 20 lycanthropes, and they had taken out like 15 of them. And I saw that as quite a bit of an issue. So I had to, on the fly, introduce some more lycanthropes at that point. So the second round, I had a new group of 20 come in, and they were able to actually make their attacks off. So I tried to escalate the combat in that way, by adapting to the situation and making it clear that they were being attacked by like a large group. And I think I think the characters were, well, they were worried because there was a lot of lycanthropes, but I did make it clear that they were minions that they were fighting. So the stakes weren't as crazy as they would have thought had they not been minions, because regular lycanthropes are like CR3. So that would have been a very, very rough encounter if I had 40 CR3s coming at them, and then also in round two, I had their pack leader come in, um, to command the lycanthropes and also contribute to the combat as well. And as soon as the leader came in, half of the group started to focus their attacks on the leader because they saw him as the obvious threat in the combat. So I made him a little more sturdy and hardy, and he was able to take quite a few more hits than the smaller ones, which died almost every time they were hit, basically. So second round came, and they were focusing their attacks. They were taking out minions, taking on the leader of the pack, and everything was starting to dwindle in their advantage, because by the beginning of the third round, they had dwindled down the minions down to, I think, 10 or lower, and the leader was already at like half hit points, I think. So at the end of or the beginning of the second round, I had one of my characters roll I asked one of my characters to roll a d6 because last session they had drawn a Taroka card to see if one of the enemies that pursuing them was going to catch up to them. And they ended up pulling the Tempter card, which was one of the specific enemies that was going to waylay them during that day. So I randomly had one of my characters ask them to roll a d6, and I I came up in my mind, if they roll a 6, then that creature is going to show up in the encounter in the next round. And lo and behold, one of my characters picked up a d6 and rolled it, and they rolled a 6. So I was like, okay, I'm going to introduce this monster in the next round then. So third round came. They had taken out the rest of the minions. There might have been only 2 left, or they taken out all of them. I can't remember exactly where it was. And the leader was almost down. And then near the end of the round, because that creature had rolled low, I had this monster show up near the end of the round, and they took out 2 of the walls of this house of cards. Um, they had taken out 2 of the walls with their attacks because I was trying to make them crumble the tower, and it failed doing that, but it burst through the rubble walls in the structure. Hello, and it took out one of the NPCs that was one of the scouts in one hit. Or no, it didn't do that yet. What it did is it had a special feature called Gaze that it did on one of the main NPCs, Diana, who was helping them, and she immediately became stunned, and that affected her for the entire combat. So that immediately set off the party to like, oh, this is bad, something's going on. And I had a custom miniature. I actually have a copy here that I can show. This isn't the one that I used because I did a new paint job on this one, but this is the exact same miniature. I had this thing show up, and they were rather frightened of it because this looks horrifying. It has these big, meaty claws and everything, and there's all these faces and stuff on its body. So they encountered that creature, and then they had to deal with that at the at the that showed up at the end of round 3. So in round 4, they were able to take out the werewolf leader, and then they immediately had to focus on this thing. And on round 4, they pulled their resources. They finished off the werewolf leader. All the werewolves were defeated at that point, and then they had to deal with this thing. All the NPCs, because there wasn't any lycanthropes anymore, decided to divert their attentions on this creature that had come in. And I then decided to show the extent of this creature's abilities. So, um, so it, I think it immediately took out one of the NPCs, one of the scouts, and like just finished them completely. Because it made 2 claw attacks and they dealt a lot of damage, and the NPC just didn't have enough hit points to endure that. So it completely took them out of the combat, and I just had it like I described how it just grabbed him and tore him into shreds and ripped him apart, and that NPC was completely taken out. And they're like, "Oh crap, this is bad." And then I might have used the Gloom Gaze on this round because Diana wasn't able to act, and I don't think. Oh no, wait. I did try to target another person. I tried to target Jessamine, which is one of the main character's wives, or his wife. Um, I tried to target her, but she succeeded on the saving throw. She was unaffected by it. And this creature that they encountered had this aura surrounding it to where at the start of each of the character's turns, as long as they were within 30 feet of it, they had to make a saving throw against it. I believe it was a wisdom save. They had to make this wisdom save, and if they failed, they had disadvantage on like every roll that they had to make. It was ability checks, attack rolls, saving throws, just all their checks. and saving throws and attack rolls. So that affected like everyone, every character I think except one of them, and that was the Oracle. They actually managed to pass. So that completely changed the flow of the combat because they were now all at a detriment against this creature. And also on that creature's turn, it had a special bonus action where it could summon 1d3 shadows from its uh from its basically its voidless face, and I was able to summon 3 of them on this first round that it was able to take a bunch of actions on, and it immediately sent all those shadows after Ander because that's who the creature was there for. And I made it clear to everyone that Ander was being targeted by this creature. And so everyone was able to react to that information and try to get things in the position that they needed them to be. So round 4 went and round 5 started. Ander immediately. I actually think Ander got hit on the 4th round, and then it realized that the shadows were draining their strength, which is very bad because if shadow reduces your strength score to 0, immediately die, and that's scary to every character because all the characters in my party I think have a 9 strength. That's just how it ended up. They all had 9 strength, so it was a huge detriment to them, and I think I reduced his strength score by 3. So Andrew immediately reacted by using Thunderstep to teleport, and I think Jessamine had run up to help him from the shadows. It was able to kill one of them and injured another one, and Ander grabbed Jessamine and they teleported across the map away from the shadows so that they could be safe. And at that point, all the characters were focusing their attention on this creature, but they were at a huge detriment because of this aura of despair in the area. Um, in fact, on the next turn, it targeted Ander with its gaze and he failed the save because he had disadvantage on his saving throws from the aura, and he stunned immediately, and he wasn't able to do anything for the rest of the combat because of that, and it just increased this sense of this thing is horrible, we need to end it quickly, and it continued to escalate the encounter because by the end of the 5th round, almost everyone was out of spell slots at this point. Or we're using the spell point system in our campaign, so I think almost everyone was out of spell points at that point. At least one of my characters was completely out, and they were having to rely on cantrips now. And I think the other 2 that had spell points were like in the single digits because they were just almost completely tapped after the um Shambling Mound combat the session before, and then this combat where they were just using everything they had to take out the lycanthropes because they thought that that was going to be the only thing that they were going to have to deal with the rest of the day. So on on the 6th round, the Oracle made a very, very smart tactical decision and casted Slow on the Golem. And the spell succeeded. It had a great chance of succeeding on that saving throw, but I failed the roll by one, and I didn't want to fudge the roll because I felt like that was gonna make things worse if I decided that. So I had it succeed, and that combat immediately went in the favor of the players at that point. Because the golem was almost immediately shut down after that, because the slow condition, um, I couldn't use my multi attack, and then I couldn't use both an action and a bonus action, and I couldn't use reactions, so I was very limited in what I could do. So I had to start making tactical decisions, and I was forced to go to switch between summoning more shadows, which I did do on that round, and then I was having my shadows do most of the damage for the combat, and they were trying to gang up on players as well as try to reach Ander, because that's who their quarry was. So everything was trying to move towards Ander while he was stunned, because he was helpless at that point, and everyone was trying to protect him from this creature. And I couldn't move forward because I was being blocked by both Diana, who was completely stunned. She was failing every single roll because of the aura, or every single saving throw because of the aura of despair that was affecting her, and she just couldn't do anything to help them. So, eventually, some of the characters started succeeding against the aura, or no, because eventually what happened was I changed tactics, and the golem tried to move forward and reach Ander, but it could only make one attack on its turn, so I did that, and they could actually see how strong it was, and I ended up killing on my turns, over the course of those 3 rounds that the golem was in combat. It was either 3 or 4 rounds. Over the course of those rounds, I was able to kill 4 NPCs, including one that had joined the party on session 2 as one of their guards. Um, so I killed all the scouts that were there, as well as that important NPC to them, and they were very upset at that. But I rolled randomly to see who it targeted, and just ended up targeting that NPC that they liked. So that was sad for them that that NPC went down. Actually, I think at the end of that 6th round, or the start of the 7th, I believe, they managed to take down the golem. And when the golem died, it expended the rest of the shadows in its form. I think it only summoned 2 additional shadows, which tried to move towards Ander, but over the course of the rest of the round, they were able to take out the rest of these shadows. And finally, after that huge encounter, the combat was resolved, and they were all able to breathe and take in what had happened. The aura of despair ended on everyone because it ended when the golem died, and everything was returned to normal, including Diana and Ander, who the stunned effect on them ended. So they were all taking a breather. They were completely expended, realized that they needed to take a long rest at that point, even though it was only like the middle of the day. And one of my characters tried to take a look at the golem, which had like crumbled into dust at that point. Tried to take a look at it and determine what its deal was about. So I had them roll an Arcana check, and they ended up rolling a natural 20.
And I tried to take a logical. I mean, they rolled a natural 20, so I had to give them something. And I didn't want to tell them exactly what this thing was because I felt like that would ruin the mystery a little bit. But I wanted to give them something that they could follow up on. So I told them that there's no way that they would know exactly what type of golem this is because they've never encountered anything like this in their entire life. But by analyzing the dust, they realized that in actuality it was dirt. And since the character that succeeded on the check was an artificer, they approached this from like an alchemical. The way that he did this to explain like how he came to the conclusion that he did with the information I gave him was very smart. And I actually think I'm going to give him inspiration for this because I didn't think about it in the moment, but he totally deserves inspiration for this. He explained that he took out, like, he basically looked at this from an alchemical perspective and tested the samples of the dust, which I told him were dirt, and he was able to come to the conclusion that it was the same sediment that they had encountered in session one surrounding that pool of water. The clay had that forgetfulness effect on it, and they realized. And so with that natural 20, I had him realize that this was made out of the same clay that had been taken from that pool, from the banks of that pool. And so he was able to draw that connection between them, and he decided to. He said that the way that he came to this realization was he examined the samples. He used like some alchemical vials and stuff, like tested the sediment and was able to come to that conclusion through an alchemical um, stance, which was very interesting, and I applaud him for that. And he told them that this was connected to that event in Wispvalley where someone had hired um, the mercenary company to get them these large amounts of clay from that pool. So they realized that this was connected to that, and whoever had sent this thing was related to the Taroka reading that the Oracle had given them, and they were on high alert, but they didn't have anything to follow up on. But they knew that the two were connected, so they're very interested on figuring out who is trying to get Ander. And I gave them some leads to follow up with that. So they'll probably follow up on that in the future. I don't know how they're going to address that, but now that they have that connection, that at least expands upon the mystery and gives them some insight on to what that card could pertain to. So they all decided to take a long rest. I had them take watches, and on one of the characters' watches, um, it was what's the character's name? It's Mateus. On Mateus's watch, I had him roll a random encounter during the night, and during his watch, he spotted a pool off in the distance that was glowing this golden color. And after investigating a little bit, he decided to touch it to figure out what this magical effect on it was. And the magical effect on the pool was that he gained the benefits of the bless spell for an hour, which fortunately wouldn't do anything because the night was going to end. But one of the fun effects of it was his skin turned completely gold, or his hair, his skin color, like every part of his body became completely gold. Um, at least golden in color. It didn't affect his movements at all, but he literally became like golden. And that effect is going to last for 1d4 days. I don't remember what I'd rolled on it, but I think it was only like 2 or something like that. So he's completely golden for a couple days, which is kind of fun. And everyone had a nice laugh about that. But they had to take this long rest, so the day passed into midnight. And so one of the characters reminded me that we needed to pull the card for the next day because it passed midnight. So I had them do that, and they pulled a card from the Taroka deck, and very unfortunately for them, they ended up pulling another one of the enemy's cards. They ended up pulling the Ghost card, which is this. The description for the card was it's this Ronin who is pursuing them. So they realized that they were going to have to deal with that this session. And that was very unfortunate for them that they ended up pulling 2 enemy cards, one after the other. But it was completely random, so it was just a bad luck on their part. So they had their long rest, they were fully recuperated, they had all their hit points and spell points and everything, all their abilities back, and then they continued. They decided to refocus their efforts since they had found Jameson and rescued him. They were going to begin looking for the den of this lycanthrope. And I forgot until now, what I should mention is one of the characters, Ward, casted Speak with Dead on the lycanthrope leader. And I wanted to get information out of him, particularly about the leader of this lycanthrope party. So they tried to question the dead lycanthrope with Speak with Dead, and I initially had it be hostile. And Ward tried to convince this corpse that it should be helping them because it was turned against their will, and their intentions was to rescue whoever they could, and if they helped them, then this would be helping people that they knew and would make their sacrifice not be in vain, or at least what happened to them not be in vain. And they rolled a very good persuasion check. I think it was like 26 or 28. It was very, very good. So I had the dead lycanthrope be convinced, the leader, and it told them what it knew, and I didn't give them too much information because most of what they're going to learn will be revealed once they find the den and are able to encounter the big bad lycanthrope, the Lu Guru, in the next session. But through the Speak with Dead communion, they were able to uncover that this Lu Guru is a female Winter Eladrin. This was a very interesting tidbit of information that they did not know. But Eladrin are very rare, especially in the Shadowfell, so this is very interesting information to them. And it was information that they did not know, so it's something for them to build upon. So, with that information, they started looking for the den, and we were getting near the end of the session, so I wanted to end it off on a interesting cliffhanger. So, while they were looking for this den, they came to a clearing, and Ander was using his pet shadow beast. He has this special ability now. It used to be a spell, but we upgraded it to a subclass feature of his, where he can summon the shadow beast creature, which gains more powerful as he levels up. but he's using this shadow beast to his pet, which is his pet. He was using it to track the lycanthropes back to their lair because it was trying to follow scent. And it led them out into this clearing. And at the far end of the clearing that they came out on, there was this lone figure, this Ronin, with a which was very quiet, and so they tried to start communicating with him. And he was very I wouldn't say exactly, he wasn't hostile, but he was very antagonistic. Because I think Ward begun trying to communicate with him, and the Ronin immediately marked him as an enemy and said that he was a servant of Dark Masters. And this immediately set off the rest of the party. We're like, what is this guy talking about? Because they've been getting a lot of conflicting information from Ward in particular, and they're very suspicious of him and what his motivations are. And Ender started questioning this character, like, what do you mean? Who does he serve? And Ward didn't want him to answer, so he immediately went on the offensive. But I revealed to Ander, I didn't say this in session, but I told him that he's going to answer the question, and I will answer his question at the beginning of next session. But he said that Ward is a servant of the Dark Powers. And the Dark Powers are these malevolent entities who are rulers of the dread domains of the Shadowfell. They're these dark entities who are nameless, and there's not a whole lot of information on them, but they're essentially bad. And all the dread domains are are prisons for dark lords, and each dread domain is meant to bring pain and suffering and basically torture the dark lord that the domain is for. So this brings a lot of questions into that. Ander doesn't know anything about the dark powers, doesn't know what they are, doesn't know how that pertains to Wispvalley or his father or anything like that. But I'm going to give him that information at the beginning of next session as well in character. The Ronin will answer his question. He knows that Ward is a servant of these entities, and he's also going to accuse Ander of conspiring with these entities as well, because he sees their party as servants of these dark powers, and he's there to stop them before they can bring pain and despair to the valley. So he's there to fight them, but that encounter can devolve into combat, or they might be able to reason with the Ronin. I don't know how it's going to go, but we'll figure that out when we get to the next session. We haven't been able to play in 2 weeks because Anders' player hasn't been able to get a Sunday off in a couple weeks, but that is going to resolve itself. Maybe not this weekend, but at least the next, and then we'll be able to get back into the story and resolve that cliffhanger, because next session is going to start with that encounter. It's probably going to evolve into a combat, which will be very interesting combat. Um, and they're going to probably get some information out of that combat, that encounter, which is going to make them ask Ward a lot of questions, and we'll see where it goes from there. But that's where I ended session 4. Um, I wasn't able to get this video out because uh, I just was kind of waiting to get confirmation that we were going to get the next session, but it's been a couple weeks, so I wanted to get this video out in preparation for the next session. So that's everything that occurred in session 4. The party got a lot of more questions, some answers that are like tiny bits of information that they can start piling up, which honestly are leading to more questions, but they'll start getting answers to those as the campaign moves forward. But everyone who watched this video, thanks for watching. If you like my channel, feel free to subscribe, to like this video, and if you really are interested in me as a person, you can check my Patreon, which I release a lot of homebrew content on there for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. I also just recently released a video on my channel that goes over my Patreon a little bit, at least goes through all the tiers. And I also show previews to some of the um, content I have on there as well, so you get an idea of what my Patreon includes. But that's the best way to support my channel as well. So even if you don't want to use the content, feel free to support me if you like what I do here. So everyone, thank you for watching. I appreciate your time, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Have a good one. Bye.